All right, good evening, everybody. This is Trevor Voss coming to you tonight on Monday, July 29th, about 8 p.m. Morgan is out living his life before he has to get back to reality, as I like to joke with him about, since he's a teacher, so he's got a few weeks left. I've got vacation coming up later this week. So just me for tonight. Probably won't be too long. Just wanted to go over a few different things. It's not going to be probably what you think it is. Obviously, some NFL contracts have come out. Jordan Love, Tua with the Dolphins, and some of that. And you can probably get on ESPN or whatever sports site, sports channel you like to watch and go through all of that. It'll probably be kind of repetitive at this point. The one thing I did want to focus on tonight in the NFL is bad owners and talk about why some owners are bad, what the consequences are, and why it makes it tough to win. When you talk bad owners, it makes winning a lot more difficult. It doesn't mean it makes it impossible. So, take the Bengals, for example. We'll get into Mike Brown, who's their owner. The Bengals, actually, most of my life, have made playoff runs, whether you go back to the Carson Palmer days, Andy Dalton. And I know Andy Dalton was pretty limited, but they still won a pretty good amount of football games during his time. And then now in the Joe Burrow era, it doesn't make it impossible to win. It just makes it a lot more tough. And when you have these owners that they want to they want to get a little too involved, it just makes everything much more difficult. Again, not impossible, but more difficult. Dan Campbell talked about his time as the interim head coach for the Miami Dolphins when he was down there. And he said he would map out his day. The mornings you would have weightlifting and rehab, followed by practice, film session, and team meetings. And that all looks good on paper. It sounds good. It's what you want. But what you don't expect as a head coach in some of these programs or these NFL franchises is the owner's going to come to you and say, hey, we have got this fundraiser going on here this afternoon. I need you there for 30 minutes. Or I need you there on a Zoom call. Or, hey, I've got these clients coming in from China or Australia. We're trying to make a deal happen. And they would love to meet an NFL head coach. Can you come spend an hour with them at lunch? It would help me win over a deal. And if you're listening at home, you might think, well, what's the big deal? Just say no. That sounds good. But as any of us who have bosses, how many times can you tell your boss no? Occasionally maybe, if you're lucky. But most of the time when the boss asks you or tells you to do something, you have to do it. So these NFL coaches get spread thin real often. And if you look at some of the worst, probably NFL owners right now, you can start with Tepper in Carolina. He's obviously had incidences that have happened. He threw a mixed drink on a fan in the stands, and then later on took a ball cap off a guy's head in a restaurant. Now that turned out not to be as big of a deal, but still, when you have stuff like that going on and your team sucks, it all adds up. So David Tepper is a perfect example right now, the owner of the Panthers. He's the owner, and he wants to play pretend GM, pretend coach, and pretend regional director of scouting. He wants to be involved in it all. And I have no problem with owners wanting to be involved and be informed. The problem is when they want to start making decisions over stuff they have no clue about. Could you imagine if myself or Ryan were all of a sudden just magically the owner of Musco Lighting, and we start going into these meetings with people who've been there for 5, 10, 20 plus years and tell them, yeah, we know that's the way you've always done it, but here's my idea, and I'm not going to listen to your opinion, and here's how we're going to do it. First of all, that would be absurd because we have no idea what we're doing when it comes to lighting. Second of all, you're just going to piss off all your employees because you put people in position of power to let them do their job. And David Tepper is a perfect example. He hires a GM, a head coach, and then what's he do? He oversteps his boundaries. There's no problem being involved, listening in meetings. I would probably want my owner to be. It's kind of funny. We had our sales meeting in Florida in January, and Tyler Union, the company I work for, and most people listening, Cloud Valve, they're in Oski. We are both owned by the McWayne family. We're owned by a family company, which is actually a lot of advantages to that. And they were there for the meetings. There was about 500 plus of us there, 20 different companies. And I have to give credit to the McWayne family. They sat in there in the meetings. I wasn't in all of them, of course, because we were separated by companies throughout the day. But they would come in, they would sit in the meetings and listen. And they really didn't speak that often. And I actually say that as a compliment. They came in just to get informed, just to learn more about the company, learn more about what's going on, just to continue to educate themselves about the industry. And the McWayne family also, their their children actually go and work in the foundries. Tyler Union in Anniston, Alabama, Cloud Valve in Oski, where most of the listeners are from, they make their kids go work in the foundries. So, have to give a lot of credit to them. And I was just thinking of that, the parallel between good NFL owners and the McWayne family. The McWayne family has a lot of money and a lot of power. And I can say this now because it's public information. But our company, Tyler Union, a while back had a presentation our higher up management team did with the McWayne family. And from everything that I know, again, I don't make enough money to be in these meetings, but I can speak about it now. It was about a 20-minute PowerPoint presentation of why we needed to have a $25 million expansion to our domestic foundry in Anniston, Alabama. The advantages that would come with it, why it would make us basically unbeatable in the industry, and also the profits that would come of it. So again, to my understanding, our management team gave the presentation. It was approximately about 20 minutes long, and the McWayne family basically said, yeah, we're good with it. You have the green light. We'll write you the $25 million check. That's pretty impressive. That I mean, there's not many companies where you can just do that. Most companies, you have to go through stockholders. It's weeks and weeks or months of negotiations, debates, process, all the red tape. So that's a very powerful thing. And when I think about my NFL owners, I want them to be like the McWayne family. And I mean that in a compliment. As an NFL owner, if you want to sit in on meetings and be informed about the team, I think you should. And I think that's good. You should be informed about the pulse of the team. Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? But then after that, you sit back and you're just kind of silent. And you wait for those opportunities where your GM or your coach come to you with a problem, and then you're there ready to help. Take the 49ers, for example. Trent Williams, their left tackle, is sitting out for more money, which they're going to pay him. There's no doubt about it. He's arguably one of the best left tackles to ever play the game. And they cannot compete for a Super Bowl without the guy. So if you're Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and if there really is a problem, I'm sure they're going to get a deal done, but let's just say a few weeks from now, they still don't have something figured out. They could go to Jed York, the owner of the 49ers, and say, hey, we need your help. And in that case, what I want my owner to do is say, hey, perfect. Trent Williams, I don't know where he's from. I know he played college at Oklahoma. He was a top 5 pick in 2000, I think 6 or 7, give or take. I'd have to look it up. But what I want from my owner is when the GM or coach come to you in kind of a crisis situation, I want the owner to go, hey, okay, take the jet, the private jet, fly to Oklahoma City or fly to Dallas or wherever he lives, get a deal done. Or send the private jet and fly him here and just let me know and I'll open up the checkbook. That's what the owner should be doing most of the time. In David Tepper's uh, example, there with the Panthers, he was sitting in on meetings. He was trying to tell coaches who they should draft, who they should play. And when you're doing that, it's just a ticking time bomb. And it's no good for anybody. Don't hire people for a position if you don't want to let them do their job when the time comes. And I'm going to get into that here as we move on. Mike Brown owns the Cincinnati Bengals. And you might be thinking, was Mike Brown a bad owner? My opinion would be yes. Does it mean he's a bad guy? No. And again, does it mean that you can't win with a bad owner? No, you can. It just makes it more difficult. Actually, most of my life, the Cincinnati Bengals they've been a pretty good team. Carson Palmer, say what you want about Andy Dalton, but they won they won their fair share of regular season games. And now you got Joe Burrow. So you can still win with a bad owner, but you got to hit on a quarterback, some other draft picks, and a coach. But speaking of Mike Brown, he's notoriously a cheap owner. And if I told you just a few years ago or less, they just finally built an indoor practice facility. And think about this. William Penn University there in Oskaloosa, Iowa, where most of us are from or listening from. I don't know the exact date, but about 20 years ago, they built that indoor facility there at William Penn. William Penn had a more up-to-date indoor training facility than the Cincinnati Bengals did until a few years ago. And you look at these checks that these NFL owners are cashing, especially the last 5 years, but call it the last 20 years. It's unacceptable that the Bengals did not have an indoor practice facility compared to the other NFL teams. Now you could say, do they really need one? They should be practicing outside since they play outside. I do agree with that. That's a Bill Belichick thing. But every other NFL team has one. So you just kind of need to have one from a PR or whatever to get free agents. But, but the fact that William Penn had one, and I know William Penn's is small, but it's still big enough to get some practice done. The fact that William Penn University had one over the Cincinnati Bengals is it's pretty remarkable when you really think about it. And one more thing there on Mike Brown, the Bengals owner. I forget what coach it was. This was a couple years ago. One of the coaches that used to coach there in Cincinnati came out, and of course everybody's doing podcasts now and TV and all these stories, so a lot more information is getting out, which is in some ways very good. Said they had a massive string of injuries to their tight end position. A bunch of tight ends got injured. They were down like third and fourth string guys. So they're in a meeting, the coaching staff, the GM, scouts, whoever's got the list of free agent tight ends, right? Because that used to be a thing. You used to have to print it off and do it by pen and paper. And then Mike Brown, the owner, was in on the meeting. And they were talking about potential free agents, who they were going to bring in that week. Because you just need somebody to play the position. At that point, when you're that desperate, you just need a guy that come in and play 20 snaps, if that, and just function. You don't care if they're an all-pro, because that's not going to happen. You just need someone that can learn the playbook in a week and function for like 20 or 30 plays. So they're in this meeting. They're talking about possible free agents, and basically Mike Brown stood up and said, well, why don't you move so-and-so, who was a defensive end, and train him to play tight end, and got up and left the room. Well, basically what Mike Brown was saying is, no, we're not going to spend money on an NFL free agent tight end. Just move somebody from a different position. And you talk about a Mickey Mouse operation. How would you feel if you're the head coach, the GM, the scouting department, whoever, and you spent all these hours doing your job, keeping a list of free agents, who we're going to bring in, whatever your job is, for the owner to go, yeah, you know what? I just don't feel like doing that this week. So move a guy from a different position. Total Mickey Mouse operation. You can't have it. Doesn't make any sense. That's why the Bengals, are very lucky in a way that they got Joe Burrow, because if they didn't, boy, it's just that makes no sense to chop the legs out of your employees. If you hire someone to be a coach, a GM, a scout, a trainer, whatever, let them do their jobs. Don't try to rule with an iron fist. If you do, you lose them. You're not going to keep them for very long. And also, free agent head coaches, general managers, people that are on the up and coming. If it's you or the Ravens, or it's you or the Chiefs, or you the 49ers, why in the hell would they choose you? You're gonna get the last pick of the litter when you conduct yourself like that as a franchise. Think about also with these owners. I think the Panthers are a perfect example of this. Lost revenue. So the Panthers are the laughing stock of the NFL right now, and I don't know what their stadium sits. 60, 70,000, maybe more, maybe less. Let's just call it that for rough numbers. Let's say right now, since they're the worst team in the league, at least on paper, let's say they're going to lose about 10,000 fans in person per game this year. Well, 10,000 fans, most likely, most of them are going to eat and have a bottled water, a soda pop, whatever at a game. Their kids are going to have it. So let's take 10,000 times 14 bucks. I don't think that's outrageous. On most of these examples I'm going to give, I'm probably erring on the side of the low end. But 10,000 times $14 is $140,000. Okay, a lot of money. And let's say of those 10,000 fans, approximately 3,000 are probably going to drink at the game. Again, not everybody's going to drink. You got sober drivers, you got people that aren't old enough, or people that just choose not to drink. But let's say 3,000 of those 10,000 would have drank beer at the game. I would figure most people that drink in a game are probably going to have about 3 beers. $8 a beer at a game is 24 bucks. So 3,000 times $24, 72,000 bucks. Move on to merchandise. Again, we're going with the starting number of 10,000 people. I don't expect 10,000 people to buy merchandise, but would you say 10% might? 1,000 people out of 10? Whether it's for them, their kids, whoever, are going to buy a jersey, a hat, stickers, flags, whatever. So I took 1,000 times 50 bucks. There's $50,000. And then finally, and there's a lot more. There's probably plenty of stuff I'm missing, but 1,000 fans out of the 10 are probably going to pay for parking because not everybody's going to drive separately. A lot of people will probably carpool, take the train, whatever public transportation there is. But just call it 10%. 1,000 out of 10,000 fans will drive to the game and park. And I did $20 for parking, which is probably, again, reasonable. 1,000 times 20 is 20,000 bucks. So again, you're getting into a point here where you start adding all this up, and you're getting close to about $300,000 on potential lost revenue at a home game. If you take that times 8, because most teams now get a minimum of 7 or 8 home games, if not 9. Now there's international games, but I just did 8 as kind of an even number. You're getting close to $2.5 million lost on the season if your team sucks, you don't have a quarterback, and people aren't showing up to the stadium. So again, this goes back to having good NFL ownership. I'm probably erring on the low end if you're talking total dollars. 2.5 is probably very low. It's probably closer to 4, 5, 6 million bucks, maybe 10. But whatever the number is, you get the point. When you don't have 10,000 fans at the stadium, you're losing out on just buku dollars. And that's why having a good coach and a good quarterback and a good owner who knows it his or her place is so important. Now the NFL is back this week. I always forget about this. It seems like we always do our family vacation the first week of August, just the way it works out. Thursday night, 7 p.m. Iowa time, I believe it is. Got the Bears versus the Texans. I don't expect any of the good players to play at all, or if they do, you're talking one series, so don't get too excited. The game is going to stink, but it is nice to have football back on the television. I was just thinking about college football. I'm going to text Morg here next week. I'd like him and I to go through our favorite college memories, games, or just moments when we were in college. I think that'd be a good one to go through, but I'll save that for when he's back. But the one thing I do really love about college football, I'm looking forward to, is obviously there's going to be football back on TV, but those first 2 or 3 weeks, it's pretty hot. It's still kind of that summertime weather. You get that feel, but you get into October, and you get that really good crisp weather in the morning. I love when I'm at home. I think the past 2 or 3 years I've been home for the first week of Iowa and Iowa State games every year. And I just love it. I can open up my front door, my back door, let that cool, just wind come on in, air the house out. And it's just cold enough where maybe you need a pair of pants, you got a light sweatshirt on, college game days on the TV. I always make a big old breakfast. But even tailgating too, you know how it is. You go to a tailgate lot wherever you're at, 6, 7, 8 a.m. It's kind of cool. But then by 11 or noon, it's warmed up. You're taking your sweatshirt off. You got burgers, brats, hot dogs on the grill. You got Pat McAfee and College Game Day on the TV. Just the best time of the year, and cannot wait for that. And obviously, Morgan and I are going to make our picks. We'll obviously we do it every year. We'll go Iowa and Iowa State game by game. We'll make our predictions, wins, losses, and obviously this year we're going to pick our 12 college football playoff teams, and we'll see who gets the most right. And then, a couple weeks later, whatever it is, we'll do kind of the same thing with the NFL. We'll pick our 7 NFC, 7 AFC teams, and then we'll do our Final Four and Super Bowl picks. But anyway, just a quick little episode here tonight. I'll probably get back with more next week, but football is around the corner. Hope everyone's enjoying their last days before school gets started back up. And thanks for listening. Everybody have a good night.